What makes a game fantastic? What makes it stick in people's heads for years on end? What enables a game to redefine an entire genre? What makes a game special? These are questions that are difficult to answer to begin with. However, they become even more difficult when you apply them to a game as, forgive the pun, game-changing as Skyrim. I and many of my colleagues have been asking this question for years, specifically what made Skyrim so incredible. When the game launched, it was met with critical acclaim unlike any game had seen before. Now, I know some of you will argue with that statement, and so I will respond with this and then move on. Okay, with that out of the way, let's continue. I really started to investigate what made Skyrim special about 6 months ago when I made a video analyzing how often something interesting happens in an open world game. For this video, I went back and began playing through games I had previously abandoned or had simply moved on from, and analyzed how the gameplay was structured and when interesting things occurred. And so I began to go back through Skyrim, replaying it for the first time in probably about 4 years. I downloaded some graphics mods, a patch for the broken section of the Dark Brotherhood quest line, and started the game up, and then I began to play. Now, as I played through the game, I constantly was asking myself what it was about this title that made it stand out, that made it fun to play, made me want to continue playing. I looked at the gameplay, the characters, the narrative, but very quickly I remembered just how uninspired the story in the game actually was. As with pretty much all of Bethesda's games, the story consists of the player being named the savior of the world and is then tasked with stopping some great evil from destroying all that is sacred and holy. Now, allow me to just say that I don't think that a high-quality, engaging story is even needed for a game like Skyrim, specifically an open-world sandbox. The reason I think this is because the story in a game serves one of two purposes. The first possible purpose is that it is the driving force behind the gameplay. In other words, it is the single thing that makes you want to keep playing. Think Life is Strange. The gameplay isn't that fun or engaging, but the story pushes you to finish so that you can see how it resolves itself. Now, the second possible option is that the story is the thing that is being pushed by the gameplay. Now, I believe that in Skyrim, and all of Bethesda's games for that matter, it's the latter. The story is effectively never the reason that someone plays through Fallout 4 or Oblivion or Skyrim. It's the gameplay, the shooting, branching dialogue, dynamic quests, leveling systems, and the overall fun that you have while playing that drives you to keep going. And so the fact that Bethesda's writers suck doesn't actually matter that much. The only time when the story in a Bethesda game causes issues is when it encourages a sense of urgency that causes you to skip past the gameplay. An example would be Fallout 4's urgency to find your son Sean. If you're engaged in the story, you'll skip past taking your time with world exploration, the one thing which makes Fallout 4 fantastic. All of this to say that I had realized that the story really wasn't that unique or special or even particularly impressive in Skyrim, and it likely was not the reason why so many people hold this game in such high regard. And so I kept digging. I traveled due west, and after killing some wolves, I tried to take on a woolly mammoth, which didn't end well. And then I made a point to simply explore and play the game in as relaxed a manner as possible, to not force myself to look for any particular quest line or to follow through the story structure, just to play. I ran around the map smashing, bashing, crashing, and clashing. I ran from east to west, dancing and prancing, flipping and skipping, and finally found myself atop a mountain overlooking the map. I surveyed the vast swath of land beneath me and tried to decide where to gallop next, but it was at this point that I realized that Skyrim did one thing so superbly well that it was threaded through every single element of its DNA. This element of gameplay design was at the game's very core and could be seen in everything from the leveling system to the character creation menu to the layout of the map. It has always been there, and it has been emboldened by the modding community. In a word, freedom. As I looked across the map, I saw that I could go anywhere, speak to anyone, befriend or kill anyone, steal from anyone, or play as anyone. If I wanted to be a wizard who runs around naked shooting fire out of my calloused hands, I could. If I wanted to go across the entire land of Skyrim massacring thousands, I could. If I wanted to side with the Empire, I could. If I wanted to play the main story or if I wanted to strike off on my own, I could. And even if I wanted to install a mod that gives me a new sword and a sweet rack, I could. Simply, I could. Skyrim, from the day it launched to this very day, enables players to experience its world any way that they desire. It's something that we hadn't seen before and even since. Now, I think you should know that I am rarely impressed by Bethesda, and so this praise, at least in my mind, is fairly meaningful. And I mean, to be honest, other than me brown-nosing The Witcher 3 death and taxes, the one thing that you can be sure of in life is that I will bash Bethesda at any opportunity. However, Skyrim was and is an exception. Even The Witcher 3 doesn't give you anywhere near the freedom Skyrim does to the player. Now, that's intentional, and I would argue allows it to have a more meaningful and engaging narrative, but the point stands. The trust and faith that Bethesda imbued the player with was, and at least in AAA open world games, is unprecedented. Now, I know that answering the question, what made Skyrim special, with the word freedom is a bit anticlimactic. In fact, I was so aware of how lame an answer this was that I waited 2 months to make this video in case I'd changed my mind. I suppose I was hoping I'd have some epiphany and that I'd realize that the key to this game's vast success lay in some incredibly complicated gameplay reward loop that no one but myself and God Howard could grasp, but at the end of the day, the answer really is that simple. Making a fantastic video game isn't that hard. It's simply about discovering the basic principles that make something engaging, fun, entertaining, and immersive, and then applying the principles broadly across an entire project. I actually believe that most times that a game fails in these simple goals, it's due to an attempt to be overly ambitious, excessively complicated, or often it is a result of trying to reinvent the wheel. Skyrim really is a relatively simple game that simply gives you a world to explore and the tools to do so. These tools include its gameplay that leaves a gargantuan door open to the player, allowing them to play any way that they want, a story that pushes you deeper and deeper into the depths of the land that you're exploring, and it even includes the modding community that allows for virtually endless new and exciting content. To me, it's just that simple. Freedom is what made Skyrim special.